Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored, Never Boring. It's Halloween, and what better way to celebrate than by painting some spooky skeletons from HeroQuest. It is the reason for the season, after all. So I have here one of my skeletons that I have already prepared, as I showed in a previous video. He has been given a Dettol soak, he's been scrubbed up to remove all the old paint, and then I have cleaned off the nubs on the base, and I have scratched off the mold lines using a mold line remover. And finally, he has been given a spray coat of Army Painter skeleton bone. Once that spray coat was dry, I gave him a quick coat of skeleton bone to touch up any areas where the spray may not have reached, and then we are ready to get going. We're going to apply Seraphim Sepia to the whole miniature here. Seraphim Sepia is a slightly lighter wash than Agrak's Earthshade, and it's a good choice for making things look more bony. And I don't want to put a lot on the miniature, I don't want a lot of pooling, I don't want a lot of deep shadows on this one. He is a skeleton, after all. But I want a good even coat over all of the bone areas of the miniature. And you can see that as I'm applying it, it really does help to bring out all the details on the rib cage, on the hands, on the face. Skeletons are really easy to paint, and really, you can use a bone undercoat, apply a Seraphim Sepia wash, and you can pretty much call it a day with them. At that point, they already look good. But of course, we're going to do a little bit more than that in this particular video. And I'm not going to be doing the base in this video. I have done the bases in their own video because I went to town a little bit trying to make 3D looking flagstones for the bases. So check out that video as well. So once our wash is dry, I'm going back to skeleton bone, the base colour that we used, and we're going to do a dry brush. And I'm not doing a really heavy dry brush, I'm just trying to pick out all of the most raised details of the miniature. So we're going over the rib cage, over the hands, over the face, top of the head, shoulder blades, all down the back. All of those most prominent features, and it's just going to make everything pop a little bit more. And again, that's a point where you can leave it if you really want to. You don't need to go any further than that. But I'm going to do a second highlight. So I'm using Screaming Skull for this. Any lighter bone colour will do. And we're going to do another dry brush. Only this time, I'm really focusing on the most raised details. So the backs of the hands, the top of the head, the tops of the shoulder blades. All those points where light would hit the most. And it's just going to bring out some different shades and shadows in the miniature. And again, I'm not being too heavy-handed with this dry brush. You don't need to be. But this will finish off the bone, so we can now move on to the weapon. And we're going to use Mornifang Brown here, but any dark brown will do. And I'm going to apply 2 thin coats of that over the handle of the scythe. And because this miniature was cast in one piece, you do have to make a best guess judgment at certain points. You will see that the scythe goes in front of the left arm and in front of the right leg, and it's not always immediately apparent where the arm or leg ends and the handle begins, so you sort of have to make your own decision and paint accordingly. It's one of those things when the piece is cast in a single piece, there's going to be those areas where elements sort of blend together a little bit, and you have to actually use the paint to make the definition because the definition isn't there in the miniature itself. But as long as you make a decision, make a point and stick to it, you'll be fine. We're now switching to Lead Belcher to do the blade. And again, we're going to do 2 thin coats over this. Just making sure we don't go over the handle. And then we're switching to Nuln Oil, and we're going to put Nuln Oil over the blade of the scythe. And we're also going to put it all over the handle, because I want the handle to look old and aged. We want it to look like it's hundreds of years old. So we're not slathering Nuln Oil over everything here. Again, it's just a thin coat, making sure it doesn't pool on any of the flat surfaces, and making sure we don't get it over any of the actual bone areas that we've already painted. just to darken it down and bring out any definition in the little chips in the metal of the scythe blade. And it also helps to define those edges between where the arms and legs end and the handles begin. And when that's done, we're going to use some Stormhost Silver to do a light dry brush on the top of the scythe blade. Here we're just trying to pick out those edges and just brighten up the top. Again, it's the areas where light would most commonly hit on the miniature. And then if you want to, you can put some blood splatters or something on the blade, but I'm not doing that because I'm going to play this game with my kids. We're now switching to Steel Legion Drab, and the handle of the scythe doesn't have any molded detail on it, so we can't do dry brushing or washes to bring out detail. So I'm actually going to paint in the detail by hand. So I'm using the Steel Legion Drab here, and I am very carefully using the finest brush I have to put in the grain of the wood. So I'm very carefully just adding lines, trying to give an impression of a wood texture, just because that texture isn't in the miniature. With modern miniatures, there would be sculpting in the miniature itself, which would indicate where those highlights and shades should be, but for these miniatures, it's just not there. So I'm having to rely on putting it in myself. It takes a little bit of time and a little bit of care, but if you're careful, you can actually get some half-decent results. But that, for me, is a finished piece. Obviously, I do need to do the base, and as I mentioned before, I've done a completely separate video on how to paint the bases for HeroQuest miniatures. And as I also mentioned, you could put blood splatters and things on the scythe blade. I'm trying to keep my copy a little bit PG, so I'm not going to be adding any gore or anything to the miniatures, but that's something you can do relatively easily. But for me, that's a finished skeleton, so that's a finished video. Thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed it, please consider pressing the like button. If you have really enjoyed it, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so. And hopefully, I'll see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye.